Make some noise out there for Chaos D!
My name is Luciano Salazar. I am the head of Dance Safe Denver, and I've been volunteering with them for about 39 months, so just a little over 3 years. A lot of what we do is going out to certain events, mainly electronic music events.
One more time, let's go!
We go and talk to the attendees about some of the choices that they're making, and then kind of have conversations based around how they could be healthier with that. So the event that we're at right now is called a hardcore show. This kind of show usually caters to more of the old school ravers because this is a really old style of electronic music.
In an underground party like this, drug use can be more prevalent. Now, compared to a club event, it's going to be very frowned upon to actually do it in the open. So that would risk people hurting themselves, not being aware of what they're taking.
I am going to be doing drug testing at this event. All throughout tonight, you're going to see people coming up to the Dance Safe booth. You're going to see me pulling out a plate, and you're going to see me dropping chemicals on top of these drugs. I think most people would be surprised at how very little that you need for this. You need very little to get a reaction. Okay, so go ahead and put it on there. And then immediately it's gonna start reacting, but we usually give it a second. This was sold as MDMA. I would want it to be a very deep blue. There is definitely a cut in this press. That's telling me that there's amphetamines in there. That right there.
When people are taking what they think is MDMA, but it's actually another amphetamine or bath salt or a research chemical, there can be a wide variety of different things that can happen that wouldn't generally be expected with MDMA.
It's often mixed with other drugs, number one. I mean, it's probably been 10 or so years ago that was like the big drug on the street. But we'd often see that mixed with GHB, and that would cause people to stop breathing. But I think if people knew exactly what was in these things, they would avoid this like crazy.
If we find a cut, I'd say the percentage of people that actually throws away their drugs after finding out, I'd say about 30%. But with complete misrepresentation, it's over half of the people that throw it out right in front of us.
The truth of the matter is scare tactics have failed, including the war on drugs, and allowing safe use and smart use is what really saves lives and what makes this beautiful.
Before Luciano was president of Dance Safe Denver, he had a difficult drug experience of his own at a concert. And it had actually been a member of Dance Safe who helped him get through the rest of the night safely. Since then, he became increasingly dedicated to volunteering for the nonprofit.
And so I was just there alone. I didn't know anyone. And when you're on these drugs, like, it just amplifies certain emotions, and fear is definitely one of them. I just remember walking through like the crowds, just trying to find someone that like I recognized. I had no idea how I was gonna get home at all. And I didn't have any jacket. I probably would have just stayed there at the venue if it wasn't for finding people from Dance Safe.
So we were recently told that there were several overdoses, 3 in the CU student body. They overdosed on a fentanyl analog, but they probably thought that they were taking Xanax. What they were taking was likely pressed into Xanax bars. So if these students had known what they were taking, what they were putting in their bodies, they might not be dead now. They might still be with us.
Individuals throughout the Denver area will reach out to Luciano for drug checking services. He often volunteers his time to meet drug users at their homes or other locations throughout the city to test their drugs.
Let's see, over the last few years, the amount of tests that I've done definitely in the hundreds. I'd say over 300. I would say, if you want a number, I'd say probably about 250 of them were actually outside of shows, just because it is rare for us to get the okay at these events.
It would be great to just rid our society of drugs. Everybody knows that's never going to happen. We know these aren't going away. Is there a way we can make them safer? So having facilities that will check your drugs for adulterants, it's easy to say, oh, that's a facility that's going to lead to more people doing drugs because they think they're safe. But again, the whole thing is to try and make a situation more safe.
I feel drug testers should feel more widely accepted, because we aren't encouraging these people to put these foreign chemicals into their body, because these chemicals do have long-term effects on your body, and I think it's important for people to know these things.
In Boulder County, James Gould is actually working to set up a drug checking facility.
We're currently talking with Boulder County Public Health about setting up a location possibly at a Boulder County Public Health or the WORKS, that is the Boulder County Syringe Access Program.
When people think of Dance Safe Denver, they think of the electronic music scene. But I feel like it's ignorant to even insinuate that the electronic music scene is the only scene that has drug use. I would really, really enjoy seeing Dance Safe Denver at country music shows, hip hop shows, metal shows, any kind of rock shows, really. And the way we're gonna do that is by having conversations with the venue owners and also promoters, and then conveying to them our intentions, and then from there it should be easy.
My grandmother owned a flower shop from like 62 to 94, and she would call all her grandchildren, well, her children and grandchildren, nickname them. Like, she called my mother Rose, and she called my aunt Lily, but that's not their real names, you know, it's Ken and Lisa, and she started calling me Sunflower, and I remember one time somebody asking me, why do you call him Sunflower? Well, it's because it's the most masculine of all the flowers. Little did she know.
Sunflower Jones. How to spell it? Everybody always asks. God, it's such a weird spelling. It's Xunflour, and Jones common spelling only with the Z at the end.
I look for a community within like my sect of people. I first met Sunflower just this past July. I first came to the HRAC as a client. I walked in, immediately kind of recognized her, could tell that she was living as a trans woman, and then also had intrigue further beyond that, just because if she lived her life as a trans woman, then obviously there was a portion of her life that she lived as a gay man, of which I figured I would have some kind of connection with her.
I'm getting pink and whites done. That's like a French tip, most people know them as. Yeah, that's what I'm getting. It's so I don't have to choose a color, and they go with everything. It's not an opioid epidemic, it's an overdose epidemic. That's what the problem is that too many people that have something that they could give to society. They may not know it yet, but these people, they all have something that they can give. They just have to figure out what it is. Are dying on a daily basis, we're not giving them that opportunity, and that bothers me.
I think that I can look at Sunflower as a role model. She's a strong person. She's undoubtedly a survivor. She's been through a crap ton of really extreme things in her life. she's really survived through all of them because she has this innate ability to have to live. She's a drama queen, and that's just part of like her charm. It's part of her flair. It's part of what makes Sunflower Sunflower, because she just drama queens through all this bullshit that she goes through in life.
Getting out, I was clean. I knew I couldn't remove myself from the environment, so it was either go back to the same old, what I've been doing for the past 3 years, or however many years it was, or go get on medication-assisted therapy like I did and live a different life. And that's what I did. Pretty much.
Do you ever think about what life would be like if you hadn't made that choice?
I'd be dead. And I say that because everybody that I was close to before I went to jail has passed away. They're all gone. I have a totally new set of friends, and it's because they're all gone. They didn't make the same choice I did, so.
Her presence at HRAC and in the role that she serves is a large one, I think. I volunteer there myself, and it's more of an evolved role from kind of, I feel like, where I'm starting out myself there right now, because I am a client at HRAC. I am homeless. Sunflower was once a client. She once was homeless. She provides the clients this sense of safetyness. She's a safety net. She understands what their daily life is, what they experience on a daily basis. She knows firsthand what that was, what that is, and what that will continue to be.
Here at HRAC, a lot of the new enrollees, participants that come in that are transgendered, eventually come to me for advice or questions or support. And I've even had one individual decide to start transitioning because of me. One day, she came in and she was done up and she looked really well, and then she kind of sought out my advice, said, well, how do you do this and how do you do that? And I kind of just took her under my wing, And then one day she just came in and handed me the letter. It says, Dear Sunflower, I just wanted to write you a little note and tell you how much you have made an impact on my life and the choices I recently made to accept the fact that I am not just gay, but I am a transgender female, like yourself. I know we really haven't spoke much, and we have only hung out in groups of mutual friends, but I have watched you over the past 2 years, not stalker status, transition into something admirable, at the same time classically beautiful. The confidence you exude when passing through large crowds, it always has me in awe. It's like the world becomes silent and every ounce of attention goes to you. And you handle it as if it's nothing. Your head's high and your smile to all who pass, well, it inspires me. It has given me the confidence and the courage to accept my true self. Thank you, Sunflower, for being my muse, my inspiration, to be me, and to be happy finally. Respectfully, Sancha.
Since the legalization of recreational cannabis in Colorado in 2012, the price of pot has continued to decline. In 2016 alone, the average asking price for a pound of marijuana dropped by 38% in the recreational market. Cultivators are now increasingly turning to sustainable methods in cannabis production to keep their operating costs low.
So more and more commercial cultivators are moving towards greenhouses because the price of cannabis is dropping. Where prices used to be maybe at $4,400 a pound, they're now at $1,200 to $1,400 a pound. If you have the most costs compared to anyone else in your state, in the industry, and prices drop, you're in trouble.
But cultivators must still follow the legal guidelines set by the State Medical Enforcement Division when implementing sustainable practices. The core principle affecting cannabis waste disposal is that all product waste must be made unusable and unrecognizable prior to leaving a cultivation or retail facility. To do this, the cannabis must be ground and mixed with a non-consumable solid waste from an approved list, with a resulting mixture of at least 50% non-marijuana waste. But this can be a difficult or dangerous process.
Some friends of mine were working in a cultivation and shredding up the stalks and leaf, and their shredder caught on fire. So they had to push it outside, and the problem with that was that the med is not cool with the shredder being outside. So while their equipment was on fire, they got called by the Colorado Med and told they had to push it back inside.
Redfield Proctor estimates that 6 to 9.5 million pounds of soil or growing media are used each week at Colorado cannabis cultivations, most of which ends up inside sealed plastic bags in landfills, along with everyday trash. So his business works to mitigate that.
What we do is we've integrated waste management, soil delivery, and soil remediation for cannabis cultivators. Right now, we're working on our non-profit program with the people from Grow Local Colorado. Essentially what we're doing, we're taking all of the leftover cocoa and root balls from this here lovely dispensary and cultivation facility. We're giving it to these guys. We're going to use it to grow crops to help the needy.
There are limited options for cultivators who choose to compost. Alpine Waste and Recycling, Colorado's largest independent waste company, has serviced cannabis clients since medical legalization in 2010. But they service only 1.4% of Colorado's current medical and recreational cultivators, and an average client only composts or recycles 18% of their waste.
If we don't resolve this issue, we've got millions of tons of organic material going into the landfills, and that's just ridiculous. It's not sustainable, it's not responsible. Bokashi is, depending on who you ask, it's either a Japanese term or a Korean term. What it means is fermented organic matter. So what we do is we take marijuana waste, we grind it up, and essentially we make sauerkraut out of it. You've got the liquid component, and we use that liquid component as a all-natural plant food. And then the solids, we convert that into recycled cannabis soils and compost. So the whole idea behind this is nothing goes to the landfill.
With the way that we mix the bokashi, using the bananas, using the apples, and using the garlic the way that we do, we get even more pest control out of it at that point too.
Out on the western slope, another cannabis cultivator eliminates waste by reincorporating organic matter right back into the soil.
Some of the sustainable practices that District 8 does is instead of throwing our soil and media and pots away, after every harvest, we keep them. So the pots that are in the facility never move. So we'll just reuse them. So once a plant is harvested, we'll dig the hole out, the old root system, and then just replant it right back in there. So over time, our hope is that we're building up the soil and we just continually build up the buffet and organic matter for the next plant. So in this pot, you see sunflowers, buckwheat, hairy vetch, and some barley, each doing very specific things. So the buckwheat helps with pulling nutrients from the soil up to the subsequent available plant. The hairy vetch fixes nitrogen and has a very extensive root system to help soil compaction. Over there we have some radish in the pots, which has a really long taproot to help defeat soil compaction, so we're able to use our soil over and over.
As one of the first cultivators to implement holistic waste practices, District 8 has had concerns about their interpretations of the MED guidelines.
The MED can't really help us out because they're not there to interpret, they're there to enforce rules, so they have to go by a rule book. So when we ask a question, they usually give us a pretty solid answer of we don't have any legal advice for you, it's here's the rule book and contact your lawyer for help.
While it is the MED's policy not to provide legal advice, they are open to stakeholder feedback. According to Shannon Gray at the MED, they are currently proposing amendments to waste rules to allow for other methods of cannabis destruction. As more cultivators turn to sustainable practices, some advocates worry that policy won't keep up with innovations in the industry.
I think the consequences of not advancing sustainable practices in cannabis are multiple. If Colorado doesn't start to address some of these issues more with more urgency, we're going to lose our sort of title as the market to copy.
More and more people across the United States are using CBD oil to treat a wide variety of ailments. Unfortunately, most of the research they depend on regarding this cannabis product is anecdotal and not scientific. Dr. Sinman Bidwell, a clinical psychologist and addiction neuroscientist at CU Boulder, researches the impact of cannabis on the human body and mind.
The data that we have in those capacities is still very limited. We don't really know which types of cannabinoids are really beneficial. There are hints that THC might be helpful, CBD might be helpful on its own, what happens when they're administered together, different forms of administration, dosing, efficacy, safety, all these things.
Despite this lack of research, there are many retailers outside of the marijuana industry that offer CBD oil with its other over-the-counter pharmaceutical products.
The whole Lucky's Market just launched them in October, and we're the first company to really blaze the trail as a retailer to carry CBD oils.
Evans has been the apothecary manager at Lucky's Market in North Boulder since December 2016. She says CBD oil sales have shown an upward trend since the product first hit the shelves.
Everyone's looking for it, especially the people that aren't here in Colorado and have the opportunity to try even the dispensary grade CBD oil. This is something that everyone's looking into.
We believe that we have a good product, and we believe that only the full spectrum out of a plant delivers the best benefits.
William Held and Michael Lubnitz, founding members of a CBD oil producer based in Boulder, Colorado, showed us how to take CBD oil.
Put it in, press, release, get whatever is in there.
But as Bidwell said, there isn't very much data out there for consumers to rely on because the Drug Enforcement Administration considers cannabis a Schedule I drug, restricting how scientists research the plant. Under federal law, cannabis products with a THC content of 0.3% or less are legal, but anything over 0.3% is federally illegal, and federally funded scientists cannot have it in their labs.
As a citizen of Colorado, I can go and purchase cannabis legally and use it. As a scientist at CU, I cannot bring it into my lab, test it, dose it, study it in a way that my 20 years of training have prepared me to do. Essentially, we have sort of developed some workarounds where we bring the lab to the people. So we have this mobile pharmacology lab, affectionately known as the Canavan, where we're able to arrive at a person's home at a preset time where they would be using cannabis, and then we can assess them in our standardized, experimentally controlled ways where we assess them before, they go into the home, they self-administer their product, we can collect information on that product even though we can't touch it, and then they return to the lab and we get, the mobile lab, and we get assessments immediately after.
The Cannabis Observational Study on Mood, Inflammation, and Cognition team performed their motor skills test on me. But in a real test subject, this data would be collected and applied to a wide variety of research questions.
We argue that even though we don't have the same experimental control as we would in the lab, that this type of data is so needed in terms of public health from both a patient perspective and a potential harm reduction perspective that these sort of observational designs are really valuable.
Since the legalization of marijuana, Colorado has seen a proliferation of marijuana products such as edibles, drinks, wax, hash oil, and more. But despite laws that allow for legal, safe production, illegal hash oil extraction continues to pose health and safety concerns for everyone involved. Hash lab explosions have increased since legalization, and the resulting burns and injuries can be catastrophic. But legal operations, like this one in Denver, specialize in the safe production of hash oil and rarely have accidents.
So I basically manage the lab side of things, everything from extracting to post-processing and product development, R&D, anything that has to do with the lab side of things is basically what I operate. Plant material all goes into what's called a closed loop system. And essentially what you do is you are stuffing a stainless steel tube with plant material, and then you're running butane or propane over that plant material. And what it's doing is collecting all of the things that you want, such as terpenes and cannabinoids. That's then dropped into another vessel where you begin to heat that solution, and it boils out the butane and the propane, and we recapture it. That's why it's called a closed loop, is because you're recapturing that butane or propane. And what you're left with after that solvent boils away is your concentrate. So from that then, it still has a small amounts of butane and propane left in it. From that extraction process, it goes into vacuum ovens where we pull that concentrate into a super deep vacuum, and then that boils out any remaining butane or propane that may be left in the concentrate, leaving you with a clean residual solvent-free slab of concentrate.
The Denver Fire Department helps regulate this company, which also has specialized production equipment that sets them apart from illegal operations.
Denver Fire Department keeps us pretty restricted and regulated as far as what we can do. So some of the equipment that you would maybe find in our location versus an underground location is we have a giant fume hood that we extract under, which basically is sucking air out of the room at all times. So if there were ever any leaks in our closed loop system where butane and propane were kind of spilling out, that airflow would then be collected and exhausted from the room so that it doesn't just sit in the room with you and kind of pool around you, creating a dangerous environment.
Given such high costs, illegal manufacturers often turn to cheaper solutions and unsafe practices, which can lead to explosions and severe injuries.
I have not seen any deaths. However, I know there have been injuries. People, taking part in illegal hash oil extractions are not only putting themselves at risk, they're also putting, neighbors at risk, or wherever they're doing this, they're putting the general community and surrounding community at risk as well.
One of these risks is the severe burning that can occur when a person is caught in an explosion. Ellie Belter of University of Colorado Hospital has witnessed about a dozen injuries related to hash lab explosions over the past 2 years.
Typically with explosions from hash, since they don't know how much butane they've collected, and the explosions tend to be very big, burning down sometimes more than half of a home. They tend to be really thick, deep burns where they need an extensive care in the hospital and an extensive time in the hospital, because the healing process, whether you're going to heal on your own or you need the surgery, either way takes a lot of time.
These incidents are so common because most amateur hash producers do not fully understand the extraction process and are unaware of potential dangers.
I think a lot of people are just ill-informed and they don't really understand the gases or the solvents that they're working with. So they may understand that butane and propane are flammable, but they may not understand the explosive nature of those gases.
The butane gets out, they can't smell it, it travels along the floor, and then once it starts traveling, whether it's along the floor or in the PVC piping, anything you light, it has a flashback, so it flashes back and it creates an explosion.
Production materials are often cheap and easy to find, making underground manufacturing a popular option.
The underground's main driving force is everybody just wants to make the quickest dollar that they can.
You go on sites like Amazon where you can buy everything, and it says, at the bottom, once you choose to look at something, and it says, oh, these things are frequently bought together, and it's literally butane tanks, PVC piping, and the whole gamut to make your own hash lab.
Illegal hash lab explosions are far more common than incidents occurring in legal operations. Alaska's Big Marijuana, Big Mistake campaign staged a demonstration in order to showcase the explosive potential of hash labs.
The chairs, the fabric chairs, and the carpet's going to burn.
So those ignition temperatures are going to be well over 1,000 degrees inside there. So if the human body's in there, about 170 degrees for the skin to suffer full thickness burns.
Burns are not the only consequence of illegal hash production. The resulting products are often low quality and potentially unsafe for consumption.
So a lot of people are using gases like canned lighter fluid or canned butane to extract their concentrates on the underground side of things. But these cans of butane have all kinds of contaminants in there that are not found in the clean instrument grade butane that we're using.
Victims of hash lab explosions often must suffer a long, painful recovery process. When it comes to hash oil consumption, products from legal outfits are always the best option for everyone involved.
In the small town of Wellington, Colorado, Josh experienced how quickly an opioid prescription can escalate to an addiction.
For my knee surgery, the serious one, I had 3 bottles of 60 of 5 milligram oxycodones. So that's like a lot, but I was also in like the worst pain I've ever felt in my life. Ended up getting my wisdom teeth pulled, and I had got such a tolerance to it that having that surgery made me abuse them more because I was in so much pain. So then I was really abusing them, and ended up quitting my job because I had to have another knee surgery. And then from there it was just downhill.
Opioids are the most dangerous type of narcotic that exists in terms of how addictive they are, how punishing they are in overdose, and how rapidly patients develop addiction to them. So they're really a dangerous class of drug that we've relied upon too heavily for too long. And we have to change things if we hope to save lives.
In 2016, 528 people died from an opioid overdose in Colorado, representing a continued rise in our state.
Even as late as 2015, when we know opioids are a problem, and we know tens of thousands of Americans are dying from opioids, still dentists and doctors prescribed 1/3 of Americans an opioid. That is amazing.
You know, dentists are usually the first prescribers of an opiate to a teenager. When we take out their wisdom teeth, we usually give them a prescription to manage their pain for 2 to 3 days, and sometimes longer. And there are studies that show if a teenager is prescribed over 3 days worth, they have a higher propensity to become an addict.
So I realized there's a problem with opioids in this country around 1.5 years ago, and I can isolate it back to just a particular patient. I was working in a freestanding emergency department, and a 21-year-old young female patient had overdosed on heroin, and she came to our doors. She was blue, she was apneic, she was on really the brink of death. We gave her a life-saving medication called Narcan, or naloxone, which brought her back to life. And I asked her questions which I really hadn't asked my patients who had overdosed in the past. I asked her how she got into heroin. And what she said to me really knocked me on my butt. She said, I got my first prescription and my first high off an opioid, off an emergency physician after I came in with a sprained ankle. And the reason why that impacted me so significantly is because earlier that day, I had written someone for Percocet for a sprained ankle. So it kind of drew a direct line between how I was practicing medicine and the really detrimental effects that that can have on patients.
I grew up with addicts. Both my parents are alcoholics, and it was like I should have seen it coming and known the progression stages of it, but didn't see it coming at all. Started using heroin after a while when the pills weren't cutting it anymore and they were too expensive and they weren't doing it for me anymore. I had to go to something cheaper and more potent. It was actually on my 21st birthday. My drug counselor sister just looked me in the eye on my 21st birthday, and she asked me if I was high on anything, and I lied to her, and she knew I was lying. And then it kind of just all fell apart from there, and so we ended up not doing anything for my 21st birthday, and the next day they checked me into detox.
The ALTO initiative stands for Alternatives to Opioids. So ALTO is a new approach to controlling pain that really emphasizes non-opioid pain treatments over opioids for all types of pain. And what it is, I'd say at its base, is a revolutionary approach to medicine and to how we approach pain, especially in the area of the opioid epidemic. I helped write the guidelines for the Colorado ACEP guidelines. Colorado ACEP is the American College of Emergency Physicians. And we came out with guidelines in 2017, which were among the first in the nation, to propose that ALTOs be used for the primary treatment of pain.
Doctors are using ALTO protocols in 11 Colorado hospitals, reducing opioid prescriptions up to 45%.
There's plenty of examples where a person really needs or really can benefit from opiates, and the ALTO study does not try to discriminate against people who truly need this, but we're trying to use alternative treatments for things where maybe they really don't need it. For example, migraine headaches, or chronic back pain, kidney stone pain, abdominal pain, things like that.
Some of the alternatives are going to be really familiar to people. Things like Tylenol and ibuprofen. And I'm going to go on a little bit of a tangent here. Tylenol and ibuprofen, there was a recent study that said that those two medications in combination are as effective as giving someone a Percocet or a Vicodin for a fractured bone, right? So wow, they're as effective as that. Other ones are very unfamiliar. Things like Toradol, which is an IV form of ibuprofen that's almost, I'd say, 5 to 6 times as strong. It is a really amazing pain medication. Other things that we're using are lidocaine, the same thing that your dentist used to numb your teeth. We're using inpatients' IVs in order to numb nerves that are causing pain. We're also injecting it all over the body. So if you come in with the lower back that's hurting, and I'm pushing on your lower back and you're having a significant amount of pain, why don't I just grab a needle, put a needle in there, numb that whole area up, and let's get rid of that pain right away.
If somebody came in with a migraine headache, well, back when I trained, you'd usually give them a big shot of an opiate pain medication and a big shot of an anti-nausea medicine, and it would essentially put them to sleep. But the problem was that not only would it treat that headache, but sometimes it would predispose them to more frequent headaches. And then more frequent headaches would lead to more treatments with these opiates and then addiction. I'm really glad that the opiate crisis is becoming a common term in the general public, and we're trying to make a positive impact and change in the opiate prescribing practices here in Colorado.
Like, I told myself, like, in detox, that like if I ever wanted to do it again, like I'd rather honestly like die than become addicted to opiates again.
Situated out of a small trailer located on an expansive ranch in Greeley, Colorado, surrounded by large pumps and oil wells, Richard McMahon spends his days fulfilling a mission he's had for over 35 years. McMahon is one man working to combat the rise of substance abuse in Colorado, but he's not doing it alone. He employs a staff of over 16 horses.
I've always been a person that tried to simplify things. And some of the substance abuse theories are so darn complicated. So I decided, well, let's see if we can't build a group model, group therapy kind of model, and using the horses as a tool, as a therapy tool, and that's where it's all come from.
Colorado Therapy Horses at Bill Barrett Ranch is a nonprofit started in 2003 by McMahon that uses horse therapy to help both adolescents and adults struggling with drugs and alcohol and other life issues.
Equine facilitated psychotherapy is not been a thing, it hasn't been around that long, really. And people don't understand it. And you know, until you go out in the herd and kind of show people and let people see and feel it, they don't quite get what we're talking about. And that's been our biggest problem, is to get people to understand we don't need to ride the horse.
equine assisted therapy is an experiential treatment method that uses horses to facilitate trust between the therapist and client, while also taking therapy sessions out of the office. And it is a method that more and more mental health professionals are using to treat drug and alcohol addiction.
The horse is an epitome of perfect love. And love being the opposite of fear, if that's what's driving their substance abuse, which I believe it is, it's environmental cause, then they learn to trust the animal and hey, Monty.
When it comes to substance abuse and addiction, we know that this is a huge issue in our society. We know that there's health issues that we need to address, that we need to look more into. And interacting with animals and nature feels like a natural next step in the progression of what we know about human health and development.
Nina Ekholm-Frey is the director of equine programs for the Institute of Human-Animal Connection at the University of Denver, where she also leads the new Equine-Assisted Mental Health Practitioner Certificate program. And with a background in substance abuse therapy, Ekholm-Frey is working alongside the Institute to educate the public on the benefits of equine-assisted therapy.
In the equine-assisted therapy environment, we have a few elements that are perhaps different and can be really beneficial and positive for clients seeking this sort of treatment. First of all, the setting is different. With other animals, dogs and smaller animals, we tend to bring them into the office setting, which helps in terms of accessibility. But when it comes to horses, we actually need to be out in their environment, which brings with it some natural features. It might not just be horses we see in that environment. So the setting is non-traditional, and it might help clients who had perhaps bad experiences in an office setting, who might not feel entirely motivated to seek treatment.
Back at Bill Barrett Ranch, McMahon employs natural humanship training, a program he developed after working many years with adults and adolescents struggling with substance abuse. The program was developed to be effective in group settings with the horses.
My training has been, just, on-the-job training for forever with humans, but then, having horses and learning, the whole watching a herd and being out, just watching the animal and being with them, the animals, learning from them.
You are beautiful. Yes, you are. Yes, you are.
In my experience with substance abuse, it's all rooted in fear. And what I'm doing is I'm watching the person to see where their fear is. Because if people haven't been around horses, there's going to be some kind of anxiety coming out here with 120,000 pounds of animal in this pen. And so, and I'm also, helping them overcome some of that fear and become friends with the animals.
The program has become increasingly popular in recent years for adults looking for alternative therapies to overcome drug and alcohol addiction. And it is with this popularity that mental health professionals in the animal-assisted therapy field hope to propel research efforts for the treatment method and make it more accessible to Coloradoans everywhere.
So my hope when it comes to equine-assisted work is that more clients will have an opportunity to engage with their own health, to engage with their own treatment in ways that are not limited to just sitting in small spaces and very close to another human that they might not know or trust.
Until then, those working in equine-assisted therapy, such as McMahon, continue to push the boundaries of conventional substance abuse treatment methods and work to help scores of people hoping to be free of their drug and alcohol addictions.